Remember my 17th birthday party when you lifted your skirt up in front of all those
I
people?
did not lift
including
my
that guy,
skirt.
Michael.
It twirled up. You only remember the bad stuff, don't you? What about the big band that I got to play at that party? Do you remember that? No. You only remember that my skirt accidentally twirled up.
And you weren't wearing any underwear.
Well, you said you loved me.
I admitted at the time.
Well, what is it, a viral love? Kind of a 24-hour thing?
Do you mind if I have a drink?
Do you mind if I drop acid?
You know how many people give their right arm to be in show business, to lead the kind of life that you lead?
I know, but the trouble is I can't feel my life. Ma, I'm middle-aged.
I'm middle-aged.
How many 120-year-old women do you know?
Hello, I'm film historian Tony Maeda.
And I'm Brad Streep, who's just a guy who likes movies.
We discuss movies and television from Hollywood's golden age. We go behind the scenes and share our opinions, too.
And of course, being the average guy, my opinions are the ones that matter.
As does your self-delusion. Welcome to Going Hollywood. So, Brad, I want to ask you a question I've been wanting to ask you for a while. How'd you like to have Joan Crawford as a podcast co-host? Or Lana Turner?
These are my options?
Yes, me or Joan or Lana. Or Carrie Fisher. Oh, if only.
Tony, if Carrie Fisher walked in the door, you'd be history. I
dropped
love
me
you
like a hot potato, man. I don't blame you. I'd drop me too. Well, obviously, to those very astute listeners out there, we are going to talk about one of my favorite movies, and it's in my top 5, Postcards from the Edge. And I actually remember when you gave me grief because as much as I love What's Up Doc, it wasn't in my top 5 when we did the What's Up Doc Bringing Up Baby episode.
Yes.
Do you remember that?
Yes,
Well,
I do.
it's because of Postcards. It's because of Postcards from the Edge. Because Postcards from the Edge, so up until 1990 it was, but then Postcards from the Edge came out and it kicked it to number 6 because I love this movie so much. And I'm so excited that we are going to be talking about it today.
And I'm looking forward to giving my opinion. Do you want me to give you my opinion right up front? Because I have a history with this movie.
You do?
Yes.
Well, yeah, I think you should.
Just my thoughts over the years.
Okay. It's a different way.
But first, something we haven't done. And do you think we should announce that we do spoilers in the beginning?
Well, we've gone back and forth about this. I don't know how you can do a spoiler alert for a film that's 34 years old. I mean, come on.
And you know what? It's there. If somebody reads the description of this show, they should know that there's going to be spoilers, but not everybody does that. But you know what? We just did that. There's spoilers here, so we can ignore it.
We just did a spoiler. So if you haven't watched Postcards from the Edge, first of all, what's wrong with you? Go watch it. It is a hysterically funny, bright, smart, wonderful film. Go watch it and then come back and listen to us because we're going to talk about it and we don't want to spoil anything. But can I also say...
if you don't want to watch it, you'll still enjoy what we have to say.
Yes,
so let me
exactly.
tell you my thoughts on this film.
Okay.
I watched it years ago and I was bored to tears. Just bored. So I watched it when we thought we were going to do this sooner. I think I watched it like 2 weeks ago. And I remember telling my husband, Maurice, I'm like, I'm going to have to watch it again because I don't remember the details. I just remember being really bored. And he goes, you weren't bored. You fell asleep. You were exhausted.
Oh,
I'm like, oh, maybe that's why I don't remember any of it. So I watched it yesterday. I am shocked to say I loved it.
You're shocked to say that.
Because I didn't, based on the things in the past.
Asleep the first time.
I remember really being bored with this film in the past.
Yeah.
And I absolutely loved it. I can tell you why the primary reason I loved it is there are so many quips in this film that sound exactly like they're right out of Carrie Fisher's mouth.
Well, they are right out of Carrie Fisher, by the way.
Exactly.
She wrote the screenplay.
It was so Carrie.
Yes, it was so well. Let me just tell you, I don't want life to imitate art. I want life to be art. Instant gratification takes too long. You're the realest person I've ever met in the abstract. I'm not a box. I don't have sides, which I have a very funny story about. I mean, these are just the reason I love this movie so much. This movie has kind of been the soundtrack of my adult life as a gay man. I've had more friendships and more relationships where we just quoted these lines back and forth to people. And if you get it, you get it. You know, if you get Carrie Fisher, and I don't know how anybody could not get the goddess Carrie Fisher, then we're all on the same planet together. We're all in the same club. And we miss her so very much, just as an entity on Earth, I think.
Yeah, and you know she's one of my idols.
See, I didn't know that until you just told me that. That's wonderful.
Yeah, Carrie is one of my idols. And the reason Carrie is one of my idols is I have a substance abuse problem. But the bigger reason, well, I guess I do. I don't do them anymore.
And that's the problem. No, I'm kidding.
Yeah, that's the problem. But the bigger deal is I have bipolar disorder. And when I've had it my whole life, but there reached a point where my whole life just fell apart because it just went out of control. And I was undiagnosed. So getting diagnosed was actually one of the best things that ever happened in my life because for the first time, my life makes sense.
Yeah.
But it was also kind of scary. And then Carrie Fisher, who is the most open person in the world, before people really were being open and honest about having some type of mental illness, she was out there.
Yeah.
And she was talking about how she dealt with it. And she talked about that she lives with it. And I love her. And if you search for my name, you'll find me other podcasts talking about it. Like, because she taught me just be,
That's so wonderful.
I want to help people. I want to help people the way she helped me.
Well,
so I just talk about it.
Isn't that one of the most amazing things about her, aside from her incredible mind and her incredible literary skills? I don't even want to go. We will go into her gifts as a singer, which are remarkable. Her brutal frankness and honesty about her disease and her addiction and her bipolar
And her whole life.
Were unprecedented. And that's, how can you not love someone or admire someone so much who's so honest about who they are and help so many people in doing it? I mean, she was just an exemplary human being. And I think I said before about Audrey Hepburn, when people die young. Now, Carrie died for many reasons that were not necessarily angelic, if you're going to judge them. But, God said, I created you and you are amazing. I want you back. I want you to make me laugh for a while because you've been making these other people laugh for almost 60 years. And I just find such joy. It's a little bit what we talked about with the boys in the band. There's like a joy with the pain with Carrie Fisher. The joy is in her honesty and her relatability. That's where the laughter is. That's what's funny. Humor, truth. Totally.
And I don't have any direct quotes about it, but part of her being, she was an open book and sometimes much to the chagrin of her mother. But, even about her weight, she was so funny on, I don't remember what talk show I was watching her on, but she was talking about the fact that, she was doing the new Star Wars movies.
Mm-hmm.
And she was seeing all these things online, like Carrie Fisher's gained weight, blah, blah, blah. And she goes, I'm sorry, I'm 60 years old and I don't fit in a gold bikini.
Exactly. No, I think she said she Googled herself something which she did not recommend without a lubricant, and that she read somebody said WTF Carrie Fisher question mark. She used to be so hot and now she looks like Elton John, and it's just like, first of all, people are reprehensible, and second of all, the fact that she could laugh about that and then turn it around so it's not hurting her, it's just part of her genius. As a writer and as a performer.
So you and I have hinted back and forth that we want to do a Carrie Fisher episode. So we're going to make it official. Sometime in the future, we will do a Carrie Fisher episode. If you haven't read Wishful Drinking or seen, I think it's on Amazon. It's somewhere out there. She does her stage route on film. Do it. Read them. Watch it. It's incredible. And then you'll be prepared. Or if you don't, we're going to go into it because she has an amazing life.
Yeah. Well, to start with, her mother, she's the child of Debbie Reynolds and Eddie Fisher. I mean, two Hollywood legends, which kind of leads us to this movie we're talking about, because Suzanne Vale, a.k.a. Carrie Fisher, is also the daughter of a famous movie star, one Doris Mann. Brad, why don't you tell us a little bit about Postcards from the Edge, the film?
Okay, yes. We'll talk about the film Postcards from the Edge, which is based on Carrie Fisher's book. And I'll just start out by saying that Carrie and her mom both insist this is not about their relationship. And I believe them, but there is so much of Carrie. And I believe them that they think that's true, but it ain't true.
Well, Carrie actually called it faction. She said it's fact and fiction together. It's faction.
I heard her call it science fiction film about Hollywood.
It's so true. From Princess Leia. Hey, you gotta believe
exactly. So this is a 1990 film, as I said, based on Carrie Fisher's book of the same name. It stars Meryl Streep as Suzanne Vale, which is the Carrie Fisher character, and then Shirley MacLaine as Doris Mann as the Debbie Reynolds character. And it was produced by Mike Nichols, and he's very important because there's a lot that went on between
and directed
them.
by
Mike Nichols.
Mike Nichols.
Yeah, it's directed. And there's a lot that went on between them, and it's good. It was good to work with, according to Carrie. It's the story of Suzanne Vale, who is an actress, who is the daughter of a Hollywood megastar at one time, a Hollywood elite, maybe like Debbie Reynolds. I'm not sure.
Maybe a little bit like Debbie Reynolds.
Bit. And it's about Suzanne coming out of rehab. And I think Carrie came out of rehab at one time.
A couple times. God bless her.
Anyway, Suzanne is also in movies. She's not as big of a star as her mother, but she is in the movies, and she comes out of rehab, and the insurance company does not want her to insure her for a film that she's supposed to do. And so they're talked into insuring her if she is with a caretaker. So she moves in with her mother. And comedy and distress ensues from that point.
And almost drug use ensues, yeah.
Yes, it is their simultaneous, tumultuous, yet deeply loving and funny relationship.
It's just, that's exactly what it's about. And I think the reason why people, obviously, as we were saying before, faction, so much of the reality bleeds into the fiction and vice versa. No, so the book that the film Postcards from the Edge is based on Carrie Fisher's book, Postcards from the Edge. And the thing is that Carrie Fisher, she had a drug overdose in 1985 and went into rehab. And after rehab, she decided she got sober and she got into a 12-step program and began looking at her life. And she decided she wanted to rebuild her career. And she had a pretty bad, had a pretty bad reputation after some of her, as it turns out, behaviors on other film sets because of drugs, but also because of her undiagnosed bipolar 2. So the thing is about Carrie is that she was such a, even when she was doing these films like Under the Rainbow, like the Star Wars films, she was still had a reputation as a very smart, bright, funny woman. And she had a lot of friends. One of her friends was a writer from Esquire named Paul Slansky, who knew how bright and witty she was and wanted to recommend her for a short Q&A with Esquire magazine. And it was called The Unparalleled Wisdom of Carrie Fisher or something like that. And it was the beginning of a lot of her quote-unquote Fisherisms, like, calling her family blue-blooded white trash. And, how she's spent her entire life trying to get to the end of her personality. I mean, just these things which are so bright and sharp and witty and wonderful. And it had such a great response that they wanted her to write kind of a short insider dishy series of essays on Hollywood and Beverly Hills. And Carrie was going to call it Money Dearest, which is a fabulous title. And this was going to be a series of essays. Isn't that great? A series of essays like Fran Lebowitz. So you think about Fran Lebowitz and her New York version. Well, this would have been Carrie's Beverly Hills version. But Carrie didn't like the tone. She didn't like the snarkiness. She decided she wanted to write a novel about her recovery about rehab and her recovery afterwards and her attempts to rebuild her career. So the book Postcards from the Edge is really about that. It's about addiction and recovery, and it's about her efforts to rebuild her career after her overdose. And the mother character is only incidental in the book Postcards from the Edge. The book Postcards from the Edge consists of, the first few parts are epistolary. They're memos, they're postcards. Hello, title, Postcards from the Edge. They're letters that Suzanne is writing to people. And then there's a male character who comes in named Jack, who's the Dennis Quaid character in the movie. And they have a series of relationships. So the book was a great success. I guess that's what I'm trying to say. And it caught the attention of Mike Nichols, the famed director Mike Nichols, who optioned it to make a movie of it. And he wanted Carrie to write the screenplay. And she got some help from some of her screenwriting friends because she'd never written a screenplay before. And she talked to like Buck Henry and some of her other screenwriting friends. And she gave one scene to Mike Nichols, and it was a scene with her mother. And Mike said, that's it. This is what I want this movie to be about. Your book was about the recovery after substance abuse. This book is about the relationship between these two women. And that's how Postcards from the Edge, the movie, came about.
And I think he made a good decision, though I will say
too.
I've never read the book. I need to read the book. I'm ashamed
the book is
to
good.
say
It's
that.
fun, but you keep waiting for Doris to come in. You're like, where's Doris?
Yeah.
I want to see Doris Mann because it's just so memorable. And Mike Nichols, we haven't really talked much about Mike Nichols. We haven't covered many of his films. We'll have to do that. But, Mike Nichols was one of the greatest directors probably in the Hollywood history. And, he directed some of the The Graduate, Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf. I mean, this man knew his stuff and he was so highly respected, but sometimes he could pull a couple boners, for lack of a better term. He originally wanted to call Postcards from the Edge Hollywood and Vine. Okay. Huh. I think Hollywood and Wine is a better title, but Hollywood and Vine.
Doesn't even make sense.
And then Carrie's like, no. And then he said, what about Entertainment Tonight? And she's like, Mike, why don't we just call it Postcards from the Edge? And that's what they did.
Hollywood and Wine is definitely a better title. Hollywood and Vine is so vague. It doesn't tell me anything.
So one of the great things about Mike Nichols is that Mike Nichols was very close with a certain actress / goddess named Meryl Streep. And because of Mike Nichols, Meryl Streep said, yes, I want to play this part. So can you imagine your first film? Granted, you're Carrie Fisher, so it's, life ain't too shabby. But to have your first film that you've written be in your character that is based on you being played by Meryl Streep. Not too shabby.
And what Carrie said about Meryl Streep is she forgives Meryl for being luminous. And she also said that Meryl is a smart, funny actress, and I'm the drug problem.
Oh, so true. It's so true.
And
It's so true.
I want to emphasize one more thing about Carrie. If you guys know Carrie from just Star Wars or even Postcards from the Edge or whatever movies, you really need to watch her be interviewed or read her books. She is hysterically funny. And I really wish she did more comedy films.
Yeah, it's kind of amazing. The films that, after the success of Postcards, she said she definitely made a mental shift in her mind where she was more a writer who acted as opposed to an actor who writes. And she said the only reason she really did films was to, ease up on the loneliness because writing is such a lonely profession and to make money.
Another thing she said is that after this movie and when she really got back into acting again, she became the friend. She was asked what movies really made a difference in her career. And she said, well, Star Wars, of course. But then she said, Harry Met Sally. And the reason she said Harry Met Sally is because she was the friend. And she then was the friend. She was in all the movies as a friend. And she said, that's not so bad. It's better to be typecast as the friend and have work. Because if you're typecast as a princess, how many films need a Princess Leia?
Well, it turns out quite a few. By the end of her life, she played Leia what? 6 times? 5 times? Yeah, that's funny.
Yep.
So Meryl read the script, and Meryl said that the line that prompted her to want to play this part was the line near the end of the film when Suzanne says to the Gene Hackman director character, I know a lot of my life is great. Problem is I just can't feel my life. And that struck Meryl, and Meryl thought, I want to play this part. So when you've got Meryl Streep playing you in a film, you're doing pretty well. And when you get Shirley MacLaine to play your quote-unquote mother in the film, I think you're doing even better. But there was another actress who really thought she would be good to play Carrie Fisher's mother. Do you know who that was, Brad?
Who was that?
Carrie Fisher's mother,
Oh.
Debbie Reynolds. The story is that when they decided they were going to make a film of it, Debbie Reynolds contacted Mike Nichols and said, Mike, I would really like to read for the part of Doris, of Suzanne's mother. And Mike wrote back to her and said, Debbie, you're just not right for it.
Which, first of all, I want to say what Carrie said about Shirley MacLaine.
Okay.
Because she was asked how she thought Shirley MacLaine did. And she said, well, she was an actress playing an actress, so it was seamless. Her demeanor was created by the studios, like my mother.
Yeah.
And that's where I think Debbie Reynolds would have been perfect for this, except it would have been a little too spot on.
Yeah.
I don't know what Debbie's like, what she was like in personal life, but what she projected to the public, Shirley MacLaine was Debbie Reynolds in every way, shape, or form, in the way she talked, in the way she thought, and her opinions.
I do love Debbie Reynolds as an actress, but I have to confess that I kind of prefer Shirley. I think that Shirley MacLaine is such a skilled technician. And I think that the character she creates is different from Debbie. Actually, I think it's always funny because when I first see her in Postcards from the Edge, I don't think she's not reminding me of Debbie Reynolds. She's reminding me of Lucille Ball. I mean, she's got the red hair and she's got the dark glasses. And Gary Morton, hello, as an aside, does a cameo as Suzanne's agent, Uncle Morty, he calls himself, which I think is hysterically funny.
That is true. I don't know. Maybe I wouldn't have noticed had I not known that it was based on Debbie.
Yeah. Well, I think that Shirley MacLaine doesn't really play Debbie. She plays a movie star named Doris Mann. And that's the thing that Carrie Fisher always tried to say about this film is when people would say, oh, you poor thing, all the things you went through in your life. I saw the movie. And she'd be like, well, okay, some of that is true. Some of that stuff happened, but some of that stuff didn't. Some of that stuff made up. Carrie Fisher got very upset about the scene, a couple scenes. She didn't like the scene where Doris is pouring the vodka into the smoothie. She said, it upset her that people would think her mother did that because she always maintained that her mother was not an alcoholic. Her mother liked her wine, just like Doris Mann liked her wine. But she was not an alcoholic. She didn't drive up a tree with her Mercedes. And so she got kind of upset about that. But she also knew that people were going to make that assumption because when you write a book, which is what Carrie called it an emotional autobiography, again, we're back to faction. Some of it's true, some of it's not. People are going to assume it's all true. And, some of it was, some of it wasn't.
Carrie said the scene on the staircase where her and her mother were fighting, that never happened. She said her and her mother didn't fight. She said we fought when I was a teenager, and I did base a lot of this on that. But as adults, we don't.
Yeah. Well, she said that her skirt, there was a party, and Debbie Reynolds' skirt did accidentally twirl up, and she indeed was not wearing any underwear. But the fact, so that story's real. But the fact that they would have that argument as adults on a stairway, Carrie did not think was true to life. She didn't think that was a true situation. And that's very true. But Shirley MacLaine, she knew Debbie Reynolds. They had been friends forever. Shirley MacLaine was supposed to do Molly Brown in The Unsinkable Molly Brown, the film version. But she couldn't get out of her contract to Hal Wallace. So Debbie got it. So Debbie was always very grateful to Shirley for giving her for not being able to do Molly Brown because Debbie played Molly Brown practically the rest of her life. So when Shirley got this part, I guess she was kind of like, okay, I had mine. You have yours. It's okay. So I just think it's fascinating. And Shirley actually, even though she knew Debbie for years, went to Debbie's house and hung out with her for a couple days to try to I don't know why, because as I said, I don't think she's doing Debbie Reynolds. I think she's playing an original character named Doris Mann, who just is based on all these broads that she knew back from the 50s and 60s.
Tony, I'm stopping our conversation real quick.
Why? Brett, we're in the middle of a podcast.
But this is about the podcast, and it's very important.
Okay.
Listener, whatever app you're listening on, whether it's on the computer or on the phone, reach your finger or your mouse over. It usually says follow. Some still say subscribe, and click that. And what's going to happen when they do that, Tony?
They're going to get notified when a new episode is available, and they can listen to us again. You don't want to miss that.
No.
Can we get back to the episode that we were recording?
Of course.
Please?
Of course.
All right. Thank you. Don't forget to subscribe and follow. So I'd like to talk about a couple specific scenes in the film that kind of highlight this relationship, because this film is about the relationship between these two women. And one of my favorite scenes We already talked about the stairway scene, the it twirled up scene. But one of my favorite scenes is what I call the morning after scene. It's when Suzanne comes home from her date with Jack, with Dennis Quaid.
With quite the scoundrel.
Yes, the scoundrel. And it's got to be early in the morning. It's very early in the morning because it's dark. And she thinks she's, sneaking into the house, but no, Doris is waiting up for her in the living room with a bottle of wine, drinking alone in the dark in the middle of the night, just like God intended. But she doesn't have a drinking problem.
No drinking problem at all.
At all. Because, she drinks socially. And Suzanne took acid socially, which I love this scene. But what I think it illustrates is this film is about the relationship between these two women. And the media scenes and the most wonderful scenes are the scenes just between these two women. And that's what you really live for in this movie. I mean, the banter about, we started the podcast with, how'd you like to have Joan Crawford for a mother? These are my options, you or Joan or Lana. It's so funny because you can really picture Carrie Fisher and Debbie Reynolds having this debate, maybe not in the middle of the night while Debbie's drinking her wine because she likes her wine. But it's so rich with character and the humor of these exchanges, and they're so bright and they're so witty, and I just love that scene.
Yeah, it's funny. It's kind of sad, but funny at the same time. It's more funny than sad.
Yes, exactly. And it's the whole, I don't need anybody to watch over me. I'm old enough. And she goes, I'm middle-aged. And Doris says, I'm middle-aged. And it's the famous, how many 120-year-old women do you know? Which I always think about. It's a wonderful scene. I love that scene. It's probably my favorite scene in the entire film.
I want to go back to people thinking that this was about Carrie and Debbie. Because Debbie made a quote on Larry King, and I love it because it really shows what love these two women had for each other. I mean, her mom died 1 day, 2 days after Carrie died.
One day.
She was so heartbroken.
Yeah.
Larry King, like everybody else, said, is this about you guys? And she said, it's not about me. Carrie wrote a novel. People will think it's true because of Carrie's brilliance.
Yeah.
She said she loved the novel, except it was shocking because it was so graphic in the language.
And Debbie did call people dear. She said Carrie tells very funny stories of saying, hello, dear, it's your mother, Debbie. And Carrie would say, was opposed to my mother, Vladimir, as opposed to my mother, Sam. But so there were certain things in there. And Debbie would also have Carrie Fisher's voice. Okay, first of all, let's just talk for a minute about Carrie Fisher's voice. Carrie Fisher's voice was remarkable. I mean, this girl was the daughter of Eddie Fisher, who was one of the greatest singers of the mid-20th century, and Debbie Reynolds. And so Carrie's voice was much different, that was very deep and so strong. And all you got to do is Google Carrie Fisher singing, and you just be blown away because she sings a Bridge Over Troubled Water on one of her mother's shows, and it's stunning. But Debbie Reynolds would have parties, and they do this in Hollywood, or they did this in Hollywood, and people would get up and perform. And she always wanted Carrie to get up and perform, and Carrie hated it. And then Debbie would get up there and sing a song just like Shirley did, I'm Still Here, with special lyrics for Shirley MacLaine written by Stephen Sondheim. So thank you, Steve Sondheim. And so there were enough similarities that people really thought it was real. But yes, it was a mix, a brilliant mix of fantasy and reality that comes up with this perfect little gem of a film.
And I do want to give one more thing that I know that Carrie did say about her mom in the connection with the movie. Mm-hmm. She said, Mom is always right, which is annoying. So I put it.
Well, their relationship really came full circle. And you can kind of see it in this movie. They're very much in the beginning of the movie when Suzanne finds out she has to live with her mother. I'll live with her. No pain, no gain. You see the progression. You see the love. You see the tenderness. You see the kindness. You also see, here's another, Roman I clef, or here's another reason why people think this is really the grandmother, the great Mary Wicks, plays Suzanne's grandmother. And, Carrie Fisher talks a lot about her real life grandmother, who she got a lot of these sayings from, like, cry all you want, you'll pee less. And what was the one of a fly is just as likely to land on pie as it is on shit. So, I mean, it's these great. So her grandmother was this big mountain of a woman, very much like Mary Wick's plays. So yes, it's a blending. It's a blending of truth and fiction. And it just, I'm so glad the lines blur, because for me, it gives it an extra edge of fun. The fact that you're thinking, I wonder if that really happened with Carrie Fisher and Debbie Reynolds, or if this just made up. It's fun.
And Mary Wicks was awesome as the grandmother. And that is another thing Gary said. Of the things that happened, and she none of this is true, but she said the grandmother is probably one of the more true things. And the fact I was in rehab, and that's about it.
And the fact that I overdosed on drugs. It's funny, Carrie Fisher, these lines, I think one of the reasons why I love this movie so much is just the incredible dialogue that's out of the mind of Carrie Fisher and then comes out of the mouth of Meryl Streep. So if you're going to have somebody say you're incredibly brilliant, funny, witty lines, nobody better than Meryl Streep. And I had a situation with, I met Carrie Fisher on a couple occasions, but I'll never forget the first one. Let's tell a little story. The first time, are you familiar with Pageant of the Masters in Laguna Beach, Brad? Do you know about Pageant of the Masters?
I have heard about it, and right when I moved to LA about 20 years ago, I wanted to go, and in 20 years I still have not. It's like on my list of these are things I want to do.
It's a very interesting event. And I went one time in the 90s with my boyfriend at the time. I was dating someone, and his brother still is kind of a big deal in Laguna. And so we went, and his brother said, there's going to be somebody there I want you to meet, because his brother was friends with Arnie Klein. Now, for those of you who don't know who Arnie Klein was, Arnie Klein is now kind of the infamous plastic surgeon to the stars, mostly because of his connection to Michael Jackson. But he was also good friends with Carrie Fisher. In fact, he gets a shout out in Postcards from the Edge. She mentions Dr. Klein in Postcards from the Edge. When they ask, those two gay guys ask who did Doris's work. And they say, Dr. Klein, he does them all. So anyway, so we're there and we meet Arnie Klein, and of course, who's with him but Carrie Fisher. So my boyfriend and I just fanboyed out. Oh, so embarrassing. Fanboyed out all over her, just saying how much we love Postcards from the Edge, how we were constantly repeating lines from it to each other and back and forth. And she said, "Oh, great. What lines?" And I couldn't remember a single one. I was horrified. And then somewhere, and neither could he, by the way. And so we're standing there like idiots. And then somewhere in the back of my mind, I reach back and I say, "I'm not a box. I don't have sides. One side fits all." And I thought, that's the stupidest line to quote to her. And she said, "Oh my God, that's my favorite line too." So out of the mouths of babes and idiots.
Now the question is, does she say that no matter what line people give her?
She probably did. So that was she was so sweet and lovely, and it was such a memorable thing. But to be able to see her and talk about Postcards from the Edge with her was astounding, because it's such a touchstone in my life, for reasons that are different for you. But isn't it amazing that we can come at it with these two different aspects, and still love this movie?
Yeah, and I got to tell you, you have me so envious. Carrie is one of the few celebrities that when I was out here and I said, God, who do I know that would know Carrie? And I never pursued it. And I wish I had, because I would have loved to have just seen her and thanked her.
Yes.
So I'm very
for everything that she did.
Exactly. For everything, for her talent, for her personal life, being open about just everything. So I wish I'd pursued it further. I've never really pursued anybody, but I would have done it with her.
Yeah, well, it was a very sad day, very, very sad Christmas when we lost both of them together. But look at the legacy, Carrie Fisher's legacy. You can pick up Postcards from the Edge and watch it, or you can watch Wishful Drinking, or read Wishful Drinking, or Shockaholic, and they're just as funny and bright and sharp and touching as the woman herself was.
And I was trying to remember where I was when I heard that Carrie died, and I don't remember. I'm really shocked I don't remember, but I do remember I cried.
Yeah. It was unbelievable. It was one of those things with like, no, what? Carrie Fisher couldn't have died. And then the whole thing with Debbie, it's almost so unbelievable that it has to be true. And it was true. It's one of those instances where it's so, you couldn't write. Truth truly is stranger than fiction. in that instance.
You know, they had the day the music died. This is the day the film died for me. I got over it, but certainly felt that way.
Yes, absolutely. So why don't you tell us a little bit about how this film did when it was released?
The film cost $22 million, which to me seemed kind of high because there weren't, well, actually there were a lot of special effects. It made $39 million in the U.S. So it did really well. No complaints there. And then globally it did huge. Critics loved it, though I will say Roger Ebert didn't, but I'll say what he had to say because I totally disagree with him. It has a 7 out of 10 rating on IMDb, which is an aggregate of people that score on there. And then Rotten Tomatoes has an aggregate of professional critics. They have one aggregate for critics and one aggregate for people that vote themselves. And the critic aggregate is at 83%. So this was a well-received film.
Yeah, yeah. Well, Meryl Streep was nominated for Best Actress. Shirley MacLaine was not nominated for Best Supporting Actress, although she thought she should have been. And I have a tendency to agree with Shirley. But here's the thing I love about this is the thing I love about this film and about Meryl Streep. Okay. And the contemporary reviews of this movie bore this out. This was the performance that so many people were waiting from Meryl Streep. I mean, now think about this. It was 1990. Okay. So what did we had from Meryl Streep? We had Sophie. We had Karen Silkwood. We had Out of Africa. We had these heavy, dramatic performances. And then Meryl Streep did one comedy before this, She Devil, which I personally love, but it's a very stylized, very broad performance. This is the Meryl Streep that everybody knew was there. She's funny, she's real, she's kind of loose, and you believe that Suzanne Vale was walking around the earth because she's so real, but so funny and self-deprecating. And, we know Meryl Streep now, 34 years from this, from talk shows and from award shows. Yes, we know she's a funny, smart woman, but people didn't have that idea about her. She was just that dame who did all the accents all the time. So she was a real revelation in this film as a very funny comic actress. And I know that's what made me fall in love with her even more, was seeing her in this film. I thought, I need to see more and more of this woman. And of course, she went on to incredible comedic performances. Death Becomes Her, Julia and Julia, which I would love to talk about sometime. Just fabulous work.
And as I watched this movie, I was thinking about Meryl on Only Murders in the Building. I don't know if you've seen that series.
I did, yeah.
She was in this. Was it the third season? Yes.
Yes.
And she is going to be in the next season. And she is great in that role. And she's very funny. And all I was thinking was, wow, she's so good in that role and so funny. And she is the same in this role, but they're very different roles. And it really endeared me to her. And it made me really impressed by her talent.
Oh, and by the way, she sings. I mean, P.S.
Yes, she does.
The woman can sing. Hello. I mean, my God, come on. How does one person have so much talent? I mean, this is just astounding. I love that song. I'm checking out. It's a Shel Silverstein song, the guy who wrote Where the Sidewalk Ends, also a friend of Mike Nichols. I also want to mention, too, that because you had heavy hitters like Meryl Streep, because you had Carrie Fisher, because you had Mike Nichols, this movie is so full of guest cameos. It's hysterically funny. Richard Dreyfuss, who was a very good friend of Carrie Fisher's, who was also diagnosed with bipolar and had a substance abuse problem, plays the doctor who pumps Suzanne's stomach, who sends her flowers, which actually happened to Carrie Fisher in the rehab. We already mentioned Gary Morton. We've got Simon Callow. We've got Robin Bartlett, Anthony Heal, Dana Ivey, Oliver Platt, Rob Reiner. I mean, these people were like, I'm going to be in a movie with Meryl Streep, directed by Mike Nichols. Yes, I'll say 2 lines. Just put me in there. It's wonderful. And Annette Bening. Annette Bening made her one of her very first film appearances in a cameo. Crazy.
And it was so fun to see them because they were cameos, but they weren't distracting. And they can really be distracting. And they weren't.
No, they were all in their best behaviors.
The only thing I found distracting when Rob Reiner came on the scene, I thought he was going to play Rob Reiner. But once I realized he wasn't, I was past that.
He kind of always plays Rob Reiner, but
yes,
anyway, that's the point.
You talked about Shel Silverstein and the song I'm Checking Out. That was actually also nominated for an Oscar.
Right.
I'll tell you this about that song. I hated the music for the song, but I absolutely loved the lyrics. They had me laughing.
It's a great song, isn't it? It's one of those songs that you play when you're feeling depressed and you're like, I'm going to put on Meryl Streep belting the hell out of I'm checking out of this heartbreak hotel. It's just, very Bonnie Raitt-like.
I need to tell you what one of my biggest laughs was, and it wasn't supposed to be a laugh. Right when the film opened, the very first person we see is Dennis Quaid, whom I used to like. And now he's turned into as much of a nut job as his brothers have, but that's a whole different story.
A whole different
Dennis
podcast.
Quaid, and the reason I laughed is it showed Dennis Quaid and he had his shirt off. And this was the era where Dennis Quaid, I think it was in his contract, that every movie he had to take his shirt off. And
how about the shower shot?
Of course. Oh, the shower shot. Yes.
The shower shot was enough to lay me down. I'm like, holy shit. And all you saw was the side of him. You saw the side of him. I love the fact that I love the last scene, the hospital scene, not the scene before the I'm checking out, because it has, of all these lines I've quoted, it has my favorite line, my laugh out loud funny line for me is when Shirley's getting dressed, Meryl has put her back together, which is such a beautiful scene. You see, they were built for public display, Meryl says, you see how they come together in crisis, like war buddies, like the silent Sid says. Sid speaks. I'm getting all these lines, but Shirley's about to go out and she turns to Meryl and she goes, never let him see you ache. That's what Mr. Mayor used to say. Or was it ass? Never let him see your ass. It's just such a great line.
And then she just struts down and she has the press in her hand.
She does. And she's going to keep on drinking.
And as much fun as it was to watch Meryl Streep sing, I kind of wish that's where it ended, because that would have been a perfect ending.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. We had to have a little coda. That's a little allusion to The Bad and the Beautiful. Not that this is apropos of anything. But that scene of the filming of her singing the song, the same kind of situation, and the camera going up and up and up and up and up until you see Shirley MacLaine looking at her, which is a beautiful shot. And Shirley MacLaine looks fabulous. It's kind of like a throwback to The Bad and the Beautiful, which is a very famous film about Hollywood. So that's kind of why that shot's in there, because this is also a film about a very different Hollywood, but one that I would go to in a New York second.
This is the Hollywood that you moved out here for.
No. The Bad and the Beautiful was more the Hollywood I moved out here for, but I would have taken the Postcards from the Edge Hollywood. Maybe not with so much of the drugs, though. There were a lot of drugs.
And something I want to say about Carrie and Mike Nichols, because again, I'm really impressed with how Mike Nichols handled this film. She was asked if she's the one that chose Meryl Streep, and she said, no, that was Mike Nichols. He did all the casting. And she said, I like what he chose. And she has no complaints about the final project, which we know is not true because you mentioned a couple things.
Mm-hmm.
But she said it regarding the changes that were made in the movie. The book had no plot, and it had to be adjusted. So in some ways, they almost had to throw out the book, essentially.
Yeah.
Because you had to have some kind of story. So she said it's not a biography. She called it a prophecy, which, but regarding the conflict with the mother and the daughter not being real about her relationship with her mom, she said, who wants to see a movie about two people who get along and then get along even better at the end? And she's right.
I love Carrie Fisher. Oh, I miss her. God, I miss her so much. Anything else to say about Postcards from the Edge, Brad?
No, I think that's everything. Oh, that's everything I have to say about Postcards of the Edge. But something I meant to bring up earlier, and I want to bring up now. If they go to the website, goinghollywoodpodcast.com, we have a playlist of songs from all the movies we talk about. The ones that there are songs to pull from.
Right. All the songs I can't sing.
It's a fun playlist. Yeah, so Tony pulls out some songs sometimes, I pull out some songs sometimes, and we put them on there. So you find that playlist on the website. It's also on Spotify. Probably easier to find on the website. You can click the link. And we want to hear from you. We're getting some nice reviews, but we want to hear from you because we want to hear what you think of our opinions of these films, and we would like to hear what you want us to talk about.
Yes, absolutely. That would be great. And we were asking for suggestions for endings, but Brad, I think I have one.
Oh, okay, good.
And I said it earlier, but it bears repeating. just remember, never let them see you ache. That's what Mr. Mayor used to say. Or is it ass? Never let them see your ass. Bye, everybody.
Bye.